My name is Ava Clayton, and on April 7th, 2021, my life changed in a way I never could have imagined. I had been fasting for 4 days, drinking nothing but water, dedicating myself to deep prayer and seeking God like never before. I had fasted before, but this time was different. There was an intensity in my spirit, a pull towards something greater, though I didn't fully understand it at the time. That morning, I got into my car, heading to a church prayer meeting just like any other Tuesday, but I never made it there. As I drove down Kingston Avenue, the sun had barely risen, casting a golden hue over the empty roads. My mind was quiet, my heart focused on God, when out of nowhere, a massive semi-truck ran a red light. I saw a flash of metal, heard the deafening impact, and then nothing. Everything went still. No pain, no fear, just silence. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my car anymore. I later learned that I had been clinically dead for 9 minutes and 20 seconds, but where I went in that time felt more real than anything I had ever known. I found myself in a place of pure, living light, but it wasn't just light, it was alive. It moved, it breathed, and it carried an overwhelming sense of peace, clarity, and understanding. I was no longer in my body, but I wasn't just floating aimlessly either. I could feel myself being drawn towards something greater. And then I saw them, golden threads of light stretching from Earth, breaking through a thick, dark barrier that separated the physical world from the spiritual. I just knew, without being told, that these golden threads were connected to those who were fasting and praying. As I stood there, taking in this incredible sight, I heard something not with my ears, but with my entire being. It wasn't just a voice, it was a presence, a force that resonated deep within me. "Daughter," it said, filled with power yet overflowing with love. "Now you will understand." At that moment, it was as if my spiritual eyes were opened, and I saw what had been hidden from me my entire life. I watched as prayers from those who were fasting moved differently. They weren't slow or hindered like normal prayers. They cut through the darkness with a force unlike anything I had ever imagined. Then, I realized I wasn't alone. An angelic being stood beside me, not like the paintings or the statues we see on Earth, but something far more radiant. It didn't speak with words, yet I understood everything it was showing me. I was made to see how my own fasting had been shifting things in the spiritual realm. Every moment of hunger, every sacrifice, every prayer I had whispered in those 4 days had sent waves into this reality. And then I was shown something even more incredible. Fasting didn't just impact the person fasting. It created a shield around their loved ones, covering them in divine protection. It was like a barrier of light surrounding my family, my husband, my children, even my friends. I saw moments where danger had approached them, where the enemy had tried to strike, but something unseen had stood in the way. It was the fasting. I felt tears welling up, realizing that my small act of obedience had been used by God in ways I never could have imagined. And then, as if peeling back another layer of reality, the angel revealed something even more profound. Fasting didn't just protect, it sharpened. It was as if I had been walking through life with muffled ears, and suddenly, everything was clear. I saw how fasting was like adjusting a radio dial, tuning my spirit to hear God's voice more clearly. In the physical world, fasting made me feel weak, but in the spiritual realm, it made me stronger, sharper, more aware of God's presence. It was as if my soul had been weighed down by the noise of the world, and now it was finally free to receive divine instruction without interference. The angel then showed me something that shook me to my core, a vision of believers throughout history who had fasted with pure hearts. I saw Moses on the mountain, weakened in body but surrounded by the glory of God as he received the 10 Commandments. I saw Jesus in the wilderness, fasting before he began his ministry, resisting every temptation that came his way. I saw Daniel in deep prayer, his fasting opening the heavens for divine revelation. And then, I saw people I didn't recognize, men and women who had fasted in secret, unnoticed by the world, yet their prayers had shaped history. Their fasting had carved spiritual pathways, like rivers cutting through rock, creating a direct connection between heaven and earth. Then, the angel's voice came again, not in words, but in understanding. "This is why the enemy fights against fasting," it said. And suddenly, I saw something dark, shadowy figures moving through the earth, whispering lies into the hearts of believers. They planted thoughts of doubt, distraction, and busyness, anything to keep people from fasting. They know its power, the angel revealed. The forces of darkness weren't afraid of empty religious rituals, but they feared true fasting, the kind that breaks strongholds, weakens the enemy, and shifts the course of spiritual battles. What I saw next left me completely in awe. The angel showed me how fasting wasn't just breaking barriers, it was breaking chains. In the spiritual realm, I saw people bound by dark, heavy chains, representing addictions, generational curses, and deep spiritual oppression. Some had struggled for years, trapped in cycles they couldn't escape. But when they fasted and prayed with sincerity, the chains began to weaken, crack, and finally shatter. I realized then that fasting wasn't just an act of devotion, it was an act of warfare. But then, the angel revealed something even more humbling. Not all fasting carried the same power. I was shown people who fasted out of obligation, for attention, or without a pure heart, and their fasting had little impact in the spirit. It was like an empty ritual with no real power behind it. But when people fasted with humility, with genuine repentance, with a true hunger for God, it was as if their prayers carried a different frequency, a weight that moved heaven itself. Their fasting created storms of power, waves of light that pushed back darkness and made way for God's presence to move freely. Then, the angel showed me something even more incredible, the power of corporate fasting. When believers fasted together, their combined prayers didn't just add together, they multiplied exponentially. I saw cities where groups of believers fasted in unity, and it was like a spiritual earthquake shook the atmosphere, tearing down demonic strongholds that had been in place for generations. It was then that I truly understood. Fasting wasn't just personal, it was kingdom work. It wasn't just about what God was doing in my life, but about what He was doing through me for others. At that moment, I was taken even deeper into understanding the true authority fasting gives to believers. I saw how those who committed to fasting with a pure heart and steadfast faith were clothed in spiritual armor, stronger and more radiant than anything I had ever imagined. Their prayers, spoken in the midst of fasting, weren't weak whispers, they were weapons, striking with precision in the spiritual realm. I saw dark forces trying to resist, but they were powerless against the prayers of a fasting believer. It was then I realized fasting wasn't just an act of obedience, it was a declaration of war against the enemy. Then, my eyes were drawn to something that filled me with overwhelming love and humility. I saw Jesus Himself. He stood at the right hand of the Father, interceding for believers with such deep compassion, such unwavering love. And in that moment, I understood our fasting was aligning us with Him. When we fasted, we weren't just strengthening ourselves, we were partnering with Christ in His work of intercession. It was as if our fasting created a special resonance, a connection between heaven and earth that allowed God's power to move in ways beyond our understanding. But then, the angel gave me a final warning. Fasting must be done with wisdom. I was shown believers who had broken their fasts carelessly, returning to old habits too quickly, and in doing so, they lost some of the spiritual ground they had gained. The angel revealed that ending a fast should be done with prayer, with thanksgiving, and with a heart determined to walk in the strength gained during that time. Fasting wasn't just about what happened during the fast, it was about what we carried forward afterward. It was about remaining in the presence of God, keeping the connection open, and continuing to walk in faith. Then, I was shown something truly beautiful, the way fasting transforms worship. In heaven, I saw how the prayers and praises of those who were fasting rose like incense, carrying a fragrance that was especially pleasing to God. It was as if their sacrifice, their willingness to deny themselves for the sake of drawing closer to Him, made their worship more powerful, more intimate. I saw angels responding, moving in ways they didn't for ordinary prayers. Fasting wasn't just about breakthrough or spiritual warfare, it was about deepening intimacy with the Father. Then came another revelation that struck me deeply. The angel showed me how fasting plays a role in divine timing. Sometimes, when we fast, it's not because we need an immediate answer, but because God is preparing to move. I saw moments in history where believers were called to fast before a major shift, before revival, before seasons of hardship, even when they didn't know why at the time. Their fasting prepared the way for God's purposes to unfold. I saw that fasting wasn't about manipulating God to act, but about aligning ourselves with His will so that we were ready when He did. Then, I was shown something that brought me to tears. Fasting didn't just affect the present, it affected generations. I saw people whose breakthroughs, blessings, and spiritual gifts were connected to the fasting of their parents, their grandparents, even their great-grandparents. It was like a reservoir of spiritual provision, stored up through the sacrifices of those who came before them. I saw families who had been protected from harm, destinies that had been realigned, all because someone generations earlier had chosen to seek God through fasting. I realized then that when we fast, we're not just doing it for ourselves, we're sowing into the future, into the generations that will come after us. But then, the angel showed me something sobering, a warning about how the enemy specifically targets believers during fasting. I saw how darkness would try to bring distractions, temptations, doubts, and even physical discomfort to discourage people from continuing. The enemy knew the power of fasting, and he would do anything to stop it before it could reach its full potential. I saw how some people gave up too soon, just before their breakthrough, unaware that their sacrifice had already begun shifting things in the spiritual realm. It was clear fasting is a battleground, and we must be prepared to fight through it. Then, I was shown why some prayers seemed to go unanswered. There were moments when believers were crying out for breakthrough, healing, or direction, and it didn't come right away. But when they added fasting to their prayers, it was like they were adding fuel to a fire, intensifying its reach. I saw how some doors only opened through fasting, how some chains only broke when people were willing to surrender their flesh and seek God wholeheartedly. But I also saw that fasting isn't a tool to control God's will. It positions us to align with His perfect timing. Finally, as my experience in the spiritual realm was coming to an end, I saw something that changed my understanding of fasting forever. The angel revealed to me that we are entering a time where fasting will be more important than ever. I saw believers waking up to the power of biblical fasting, being called to seek God in ways they never had before. And then, I heard the voice one last time, the same voice that had first called me daughter. It spoke with urgency, yet with overwhelming love. Tell them what you have seen. The time is short, and my people must understand. And just like that, I was pulled back, ripped from the overwhelming peace and clarity of the spiritual realm and thrown back into my body. My eyes shot open, and I gasped for air. I was surrounded by medical personnel, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. "She's back," one of them muttered, as if they hadn't expected me to return. I later learned that I had been clinically dead for 9 minutes and 20 seconds, Yet here I was, fully conscious, completely aware, and without a single trace of brain damage. The doctors couldn't explain it, but I could. God had brought me back for a reason. The words I had heard before leaving this spiritual realm echoed in my mind. Tell them, the time is short. This experience wasn't just for me. It was a message for everyone who has ever wondered about the true power of fasting. It is real. It is life-changing. It is spiritual warfare. And in the days we are living in, it is more important than ever. Fasting is not just about personal discipline or sacrifice. It is a divine tool, a key to unlocking breakthroughs, a weapon against the darkness. Since that day, I have never looked at fasting the same way. Now, when I fast, I do it with understanding, with purpose, with faith, knowing that every moment of hunger, every sacrifice, every whispered prayer is shifting things in the unseen realm. And I urge you, if you have never experienced this power for yourself, seek God through fasting. It is not just about depriving your body. It is about strengthening your spirit. It is about drawing closer to the heart of God and positioning yourself to be used by Him in ways you never imagined. If this testimony has touched you, if you believe more people need to hear about the power of biblical fasting, please share this message. Like this video, leave a comment with your own experiences, and most importantly, step into this power for yourself. The time is short, and God is calling His people to rise up, to fast, to pray, and to stand in the gap for what is coming. Will you answer that call?